If you work with front-end applications, then we all have one issue in common, and that is how to handle state. So effective way to handle state management between the local level and both the global level. In this tutorial, I'm going to be discussing context API and how it helps you manage state on the global level. So let's say you need to share a state between different components and different layers of your application, and you want to have it all in one place and affect everywhere based on triggers. Let's look at how to do that with context API. And the good thing is you do not have to install any other additional library to React because it comes built into React. We'll build a theme switcher so we could switch from dark mode to a light mode theme, and we'll see how to connect that with context API and how to use it for global state management. Let's get started. But before we do, I want to wear my glasses because I look so cool in it. I thought I could show you guys. So yeah, this is me. Don't I look good? Let's get started with context API right now. So now we've dived into the code. Here's what we're going to be building, and we're going to be using this simple example to explain context API and how context API works. In our simple application is really a basic application right now, and it's just one that toggles between the dark mode and the light mode of the application. So if you would notice, when we click on this button over here that says dark mode, showing okay, do you want to switch to dark mode? If you click on it right now, you would see that the entire app switches to dark mode, so including the text changes, these other text here changes, the color of the button changes. And one key thing you would notice is that different actions on the page responds to the simple change of the click of that button. It means that this other button also responds to that click. So I could toggle it back to light mode by clicking this button here. So if I click this button here, you see it changes back to light mode. So from different aspects of our application, we are able to control a single functionality. It means that we could access the piece of code, we could access the state from multiple places in our application without having to pass different levels of props to different places. So let's start from the quick basic of context API. What is context API and what were they trying to achieve with the context API? Let's look at the official documentation, which I already have opened here. This is basically just the React documentation. So it says context API provides a way to pass data through the component tree without having to pass props manually at every level. Okay, so this is like jumbled up English, but in reality, what it simply means is that when you look at a typical React application, now for this video, I assume and I'm imagining you've used a little bit of React, you've used JavaScript, and you've built stuff with it basically. So imagine building a React application. One of the strongholds you have in using React is that you're able to break down a website, a web page, an application into different components. You're able to piece it down into different components and then use it as a whole. What that does for you in essence is that it allows you to have more structured things and more defined things in each component, and allows you to understand your code better. So instead of seeing a file with 300 lines of code, you've basically reduced the size of your file to say a 40 line code piece, or you've reduced it to a 10-line code piece, and then you just have multiple of these components broken down, and you could piece them together to make your full app in one component. So think about that kind of scenario where you have a button on a page and then you have something inside that button, and just like that, and then you want to use a particular state. You want to, let's say like the application we have here, you want to have a function that when this is clicked, it triggers a state and changes it to, let's say, dark mode is false or dark mode is true, and all of that. You want that kind of functionality. You would have to declare it, let's say, in a top component, and then start passing the props down to this component, and say it's not even the first one you want to use. You pass it down to the second one, and then you pass it down to the third one, and down to the fourth one. At the end of the day, you're engaging in an action we call prop drilling, where you just keep passing things, passing things, passing things. This is one of the use cases to use a global context. Context API is just an example of a global context. We have Redux, we have hook state, and we have different ones. But context API came with React itself. And the good thing about it and why I love it is that you do not have to install any external library or external framework or anything to make use of context API. It's literally built into React and you could use it directly from React. So you bring in context API and then you use it to build what you want to build by having a global state somewhere. Another example is that this time around, or the first example we gave, we discussed a parent-child relationship. So when I mean parent-child relationship, I mean you're basically passing props from the parent component to a child component, say to another child component and to another child component. But let's say in this case, how do you even pass the props? This is not a child of this component, so this is more like a header component. It is not a child of this component. It is not a parent of this component either. They are just separate components in separate places. How do you even pass props among both of them? It could become a difficult situation, especially when you have a more complex app than this. It could really get difficult and things could start to get really messy. So let's dive into the code and start building this out right now. First of all, I want to create a React application, and I'll say npx, oh I put m there, npx create React app, and I want to call this app theme switcher, theme underscore switcher. And now I want to add something here. So though if you built the normal React application, you'd imagine that I'll just stop there, but I want to add something and I'll explain why I'm adding this shortly, which has nothing to do with this video. Oh sorry, templates. Yeah, so I'm just adding this thing right here. It shouldn't get anyone confused. This is just because I want to make this have the features or have the settings of service workers and all of that. It doesn't help with context API from the dash template. I'm just adding a template that will enable the application have service workers, so that the service workers would be automatically set up for me, because I want to do a tutorial based on this application for another video I'm releasing, and that would be for what's it called now, a progressive web app. Yeah, that's a PWA, making an app that could work offline. But for now, ignore that I added these tags because we are not even going to use service workers in this application. And let's continue. So we are just going to wait for this to load. I might make here a little bit faster, so you could just pause the video and then continue when I'm done. Yay! And now our application has finished building. We finished creating our new application, and the name is theme switcher. So right now I'm going to switch to the directory of theme switcher, and right now what I just need to do is to open it up in my code editor. I use VS Code at the moment, so let us open that up, and let me bring it into where I'm going to be working on in a sec. Okay, so this is it. I want to say I trust this author. Yeah, VS Code. And now I have my application running. Next thing I want to do is to start my server. So I'll say npm start. Since I already have other things running on my computer at the moment, I'll just have to run it on another port, which is not 3000. Let's say this might be 3002 or something, because I already have the one you saw running on one of my ports also. So yeah, this might take a little time, but started, and then I simply want to open up my code editor right now and get started with writing code. So here it is, and right now I'm simply going to go into the app.js, because if you look at the screen you would see that what I have here is just the basic boilerplate that is given to me once I run the create react app command and start my application. So what I want to do is to clear this boilerplate here. You have to go away, please. Go out of here. And then next I want to remove the import for this logo because we are not going to need it anymore. And inside of here I will just leave it blank for the moment, or let me add a h1 tag, a simple h1 tag. Oops. And I'll say welcome. Yeah, so I want to go to the app.css also and clear out most of this. I don't need the keyframes anymore, I don't need any of this. I basically only want the app styling to be here because I want to add a margin of 0, padding of 0, and also add, I also want to add an overflow of hidden. Yeah, this should be an overflow X because it's for the horizontal overflow. I don't like seeing the horizontal scroll bar, especially when it's not an app designed for that. So I just set the default to 0 many of the times, or to hidden. Yeah. So back here, let's see what our app looks like at the moment. Yay, we've changed the content and now it just writes welcome. So next, let's go into our app.js file and see what we have to do next. So next, what we have to do here is to create the top navigation. So if you looked at our design or what I showed you, the implementation at first, we have a top navigation up there and we have other things up there. But before we go into that, let's arrange the structure of our application. So inside of the src file, we'll have some other components. One of the components would be components. Yeah, and this is basically just to hold all the components we would have. And then we'll have another one, it would be called pages. And even though this is a one-page application, we are also just going to put that because it would help you, or it often helps in code structure and code arrangement. And that is one aspect I've seen that in a lot of tutorials they don't get to talk about. Yeah, but it's super important when you work with a team. And next I will have a separate file for context. So these are mainly the 3 folders we'll be having here, and we'll go into the component file because the top navigation is basically a component. So we'll go into this place and I'll create another folder called top nav. And right now inside of this folder called top nav, I'm going to create 2 files, and one of the file will be called top nav.jsx, and I'm going to create a second one called top nav. No, I'll just call this style.css. Yeah. So right now I'm going to create the boilerplate setup for for a functional component in React, and I'm going to use the command rafce. I don't know, my IntelliSense is not working. Okay, that's not working again. I hate when it's not working. So I'm just going to use this command rafce to create it. I've forgotten the extension I use for this, but I know it's an extension I installed. Maybe it's this React Redux GraphQL React Native snippets, but basically the extension offers you these short snippets that I could use to write a boilerplate. I know, or is it React snippets? Yeah, just check out one of these 2 and I think you'd have it. Yeah, so I think it's something relating to this particular one or the other one. So right now we have this setup here, and the next thing we want to do is that there are 2 things on this particular place, and the first thing is the logo and the second thing is the button for the switcher. So for the logo we are just going to have a div, and inside of this div Okay, so let's just create a div. Let me do it this way. I'm going to give this div a class of logo, and inside of it I'm just going to have a p tag and the name of the application, switch up, like this. And then this place is where I just add the switch button. So for the switch button, we haven't created the switch button yet, but we're also going to create it as a component. So let's keep moving and then we'll get there. For now, I'll just put a basic p tag here to represent the switch button, and I'll call this button. I'll just write button here. So let's just look at what our apps looks like at the moment. So if we refresh this page, yeah, nothing changes because we haven't really imported this into the app.js file. So before we do that, I just want to import our style into this place. So I'll import style.css. And right now I want to move to the app.js component. I would remove this line of code from here, and I just want to import the top nav. Yeah, I like the import VS Code gives also, so it just helped me import it easily. Yeah, so right now if we look at our screen, we'll see that we have a switch up, and then we have a text showing button, the switch up being our logo. So the next thing I'm going to do is to style the top navigation component, and so let us give them, let's give this a class name also, and I'm going to call this top nav container. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to call this top nav container. And if you notice something about how I arrange my components and how my namings and consistency in my namings, you'll notice that for class names I usually use underscores. For folder names I usually use hyphens, and I use for file names I usually use the first letter should also be capitalized. That's when they are components, and when they are not, I just write it that way. And I like putting my things in components because that helps a lot to, why not take advantage of the fact that React allows you to modularize things and then just group them into different places. So right now we have this right here, and I'm simply going to move to the style.css file. And in the style.css file, the first thing I want to do is to style the top nav container, and I'll say display flex. Yep, because if you notice the one we had in the other place, the first one I showed you, you'll notice that is how it was, the logo on one end and the button on the other end. So justify content, I'll say okay, yeah, let's just leave this and let's look at what it looks like at the moment. So you see, switch up and button. So why I said we should leave it is I wanted to show you this and show you why we are using the justify content. So we want to put a space between. I know this first part might be boring for people who already know all this, but chill and we'll get to the context eventually. First of all, we have to set up the UI. So I'll say justify content space between, and next I'll just give it some paddings. So padding 20px, 50px, 20px, 50px. Yeah, something like this. And right now if you look at the screen, you just see that it gave it some padding and it puts the space between these components and put them at the both extreme ends. The next thing I want to style is the logo. So I'll just write the styling we need for the logo. Background color, and this color is #6F00A3. yeah, and then the width is 147.27 px, and the height is 41 px, and we have a border radius of 5 px. Yeah. Next we have color. Yeah, color of white, and we have the display. Okay, so let's look at this first. So look at the way it is at the moment, and what we want to do now is we want to take this text saying switch up and move it to the center of the screen. So center it horizontally and also center it vertically. I'll show you how to also center things right here. So first of all, we'll say display flex, and I just want to say flex direction column, and I would say justify content, center, align items, center. And now if we look at this, we'd see, yay, it's in the middle already. And that is it for this one. And the next thing we want to do is to style the size of the text inside of it. So I could just say logo and target the p tag which we put inside of it, and I'll say font size 16 pixels. Yeah, so this now looks like what we have right there. So next we have this button component here, which is not actually a component at the moment but just a text. Now I'm going to go ahead to make the proper button component. So let us get started. We need to go into our components again, and we are going to create a new component. This component is going to be called switch button. Yeah, so now we are going to do the same thing for switch button. We're going to create a file and call this switch button, and we're also going to create a style sheet for the switch button. Yeah, so this is the style sheet. Currently I want to just close the style for the top navigation, and yeah, let's just reduce the number of things here so we don't get confused. I'm going to use my snippet once again to set this up, switch button. And right now what I want to do for the switch button is to create a button inside of it. So let us create the button inside of it right now. Here we're just going to put a button, 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 and inside of this button we are just going to put a normal text first of all. So we are just going to say text. We'll come back to this later, but for now let's just build it out. And here we are just going to bring in a class name attribute, and we'll call this switch button container. Yeah, I would just copy this so that when I go into my style sheet, which is where I'm going into right now, I could use it. But before I go there, I would like to import my style.css. Yeah, and then I would switch to my style sheet, and here I just want to style the switch button container because I want to specifically style the switch button button. Yeah, so I'll say button, and inside of here I'll just say width should be 203 px, height should be 55 px, background color should be 2b003f. Yeah, and then the next one, we want to give it a little border radius, so 10 pixels. Color should be white. Font size should be 20, and we want, when a user hovers on this, it should be a pointer cursor. So that is it for this. What we are going to do next is to just take this component we've created the switch button component and take it into our top navigation. So let us do that right away. So inside of here, we are just going to remove this one we created right here, and then I'm going to replace it with switch button, and I get the import by VS Code. Yeah, so right now here is what it looks like. It just says text, but if you look at the switch button we had there, you would notice that the switch button text changes based on the behavior of the application. So if we want to achieve that kind of result, we need to have a dynamic text on the button, and we also need to have an on-click function on the button that comes from wherever it is supplied to. So let us just go and do that right away for the button. So on the switch button here, we'll just add 2 props on click, and we'll add text. So right now we could change this text here, or we could just wrap this one we have right here, and then it's getting text, and then we could come here and say on click we want to have it called the on click function. So on click, which is a function supplied to this component. Okay, so now we have this sorted out, and if we go back to our result, we'll see there's nothing here, but we could simply pass props to, we will simply pass it into this component. If we go back to the top nav, and inside of here I could simply say text should be equal to currently it is on light mode, so we are just going to put the text as dark mode. Yeah, so look at our result right now, it says dark mode, and when we hover on it, we see that we are able to have the cursor change to what we want it to change to. Now we've come far in the design. The next thing we need to do is just to do the component inside of here, and then finally we'll just have to move to our context API setup. So let us go ahead and look at how to get started with adding the other components down to this place. We need to go back to our code editor right now, and we need to go to pages, and the name of our page would also be a folder, and that is the landing page. Again, as you know, inside of the landing page, since this is a page, I'm still just going to use the camel casing style, and I'll say landing page.jsx. I assume everybody know what JSX is by this point if you're learning React, and we could just move forward. So style.css, yeah. And now I'm just going to do the same thing here, RAFCE for functional components, but because this starts from L, remember it takes the name of the file to put as the name here. So if you don't like it, you could still tweak it. For example, I want to change the L here to capital because it's the name of a functional component and not just any variable, right, or any function. So what do we have to do here? The first thing we have to do here is to just have the text. Remember, there is just a div here. Let's just put it, let me just write it. And then inside of here, we have the h1 tag. And the h1 tag simply says welcome. And underneath the h1 tag, we have a p tag. And the p tag simply says you are currently on light mode. So it says you are currently on light mode. Okay, and then below it we also have the button which we just created. So we'll still bring in the switch button, and we'll put inside of here, we'll just put the text, and we'll say the text is at this point, yeah, the text is dark mode, which says switch, which is like switch to dark mode or something. And right now let's look at what we have in our results. We don't have anything because, yeah, once again we haven't taken the components to the app.js file. Thank you. And now what I simply want to do is just attach the class names here before we go to the app.js file and attach this to it. So landing page container, and this is a subset of the landing page container, so I'm just going to call it the inner landing page container. Yeah, and then next, is there any other thing to do here? Let me look through, and no, I think we are okay at the moment before we'll come back to do the styling. Oh yeah, one more thing, let's import the CSS file. So style.css, and now we could simply move to the app.js file and import that near this one. So in a typical application, it's probably not going to be a one pager, and you're going to have, you're going to have your whole React router DOM here, the browser router, switcher, and then landing page will just be one of the different routes. Because this is just one page in this tutorial, I'm just using this to explain how it could normally be like in a real application, but I'm not going to do the routing, React router DOM, and all of that. I'll just put the landing page directly on this page. So I'll say landing page, and it brings it up for me again. Thanks VS Code. And yeah, so if you're not using VS Code, that's still fine. If you're using something like WebStorm, I use that too. I've used that in some cases, and I would say it's a great editor to work with, and you could go ahead and give that a try. They have a lot of features like VS Code, and you could just give it a try. Or any other editor you're using, you could stick to it and follow through with this. You don't need to have my editor, just pointing that out. Yeah, so right now we see where this is, and what we want to do is that we want to make this move from here to somewhere here at the center. So let us go back to our code and do that. So we are simply going to go back to the landing page at this time, and inside of the landing page we are going to go to our styling, the style.css, and what we want to style first is the container. So we'll say dot landing page container, and I will say the width should be 100 view width. Yeah, and I'll say minimum height this should have is 100 VH. Quick story or fun fact, when I started out with writing code, and even after a while, I was wondering how websites which didn't have full page, but you could basically just give them full pages without having things like just checking the size of that desktop screen and making it that particular size, but you could make it dynamic to be a full page on any screen is put in, even if the content of it wasn't full screen. Until I found the minimum height thing, which you could set to 100 view height, and it takes 100% of any view height is put on. So yeah, cool trick. Let's move ahead. So we have the inner landing page container, and the width of 50%, a height of 500 pixels, margin, oops, not this, margin, and we want to say 0 or 2. Okay, so I guess you know what that is, and I'm still going to explain in a second. So here is what that does for me. Let's just look at the result. You see that this moved this to the center of the screen. Now you might be wondering, oh, but it's here, it's not in the center of the screen. But what it did for me was move the box to the center of the screen, not the contents inside the box, but the entire box itself. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I say background color of red, you'd see that the box is in the center of the screen, but now we want to make the content inside of it to also be in the center of the screen. How do we do that? Let me show you right here. So I'm simply going to, let me leave the background color and just remove it afterwards because we don't need that. So I'll say display flex, and we've done this before. in the button component, and I'll say flex direction center, sorry, flex direction column and justify content center, align items center. Okay, so right now if you look at it, it's now moved to the center of the screen, and we could remove this color right now because we do not need it, and this is at the center of the screen. Next, we want to style the h1 tag, which is here, and I'm simply going to say inner landing page container h1, yeah, and I'll simply increase the font size to 50 px. And next, I want to style the inner landing page container, but the p this time around, and I'll simply say margin top, I want to move it closer to the top one, so 30 px, like this. And we have this. So if you've come so far in the tutorial, congratulations, you've reached a point where we'll start talking about context API and how to integrate it with our application. So you would notice that as we move forward in this application, we'll come back to talk about the button component and how we get to switch the text inside of it when we want to switch the text. But for now, you've come so far in this tutorial, but let's move forward to start implementing the context API setup. Let's go. Now we are back into our code editor. The first thing we want to do is to go into the file we created here for context. Yeah, so inside of this file, we are going to have two files inside of here. The first one would be general. I'll just start this from small letter right now. General context, and we'll have general context.js, and we'll have another file here which would be general provider.js. Yeah, so we could fit this into one file, but I usually like to make it two files and not one file, and in some cases I make it three files, but for the case of this tutorial we are just going to be using it this way for easier understanding. So in our general context, it's simple. What we have to do is we are going to import React. We're going to import React from React, but we are also going to import the create context hook. So we have the create context hook. I don't know why there is no IntelliSense. I don't like when I'm not getting IntelliSense. Let me try that again. Import React. Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't think that was even the cause, but let's just try. From React. So inside of here, I just want to bring in the create. Yep, it's working now, thank God. Yeah. So down here, I'll just say const general. I'll just say const general context is equal to create context and an empty object inside of there. And I'll just come down here and say export general, export default general context this way, and I'll leave a space at the bottom like this. So right now that we have this set up, I could just basically close this file and go into our general state file. Basically let's close the general context file and go into our general provider file. So inside of this file, I just need to import React. I need to import two things from React, which we'll use later as we proceed. Bring in the use state and also bring in the use effect hook. Oops. From React. Yeah. So next thing we are going to move to is writing our function. So we'll say const general provider is equal to, and inside of here we'll have children, and this is just an arrow function basically, and inside of this arrow function we'll have everything we are going to have here. But for now we don't have anything here, we just want to have a return statement, and inside of this return statement here we are going to import the general context which we just created, which was an empty object if you remember. So general context, it's not importing automatically, I think I just have to do that. Import general from, and I'll say general context. So right now I'll say general context dot provider. Yeah, so inside of here I'm just going to put in children. Yeah, and then inside of here is where the main action happens. This is where we have value and we have an object. Oops. Yeah, we have value and we have the object of what we want to be exporting from our components. So let's say we write a function here, we would export it out of here and then use it anywhere else in our application, but we'll come to that shortly when we start creating the functions. But for now, what we want to do is to make the general provider usable to everywhere in our context, in our application. So first of all, I want to export default and say general provider this way. Leave a space at the bottom also. So this is what we have here, and we want to wrap the general provider around a top level component in our application. So wherever we want our context to be usable, wherever we want a component to be able to access the information in our context, we need to wrap that container or that component with this. We need to wrap it inside of this. Now, because we have so many files in a typical application where we want to be using the context, we would simply go ahead to wrap it in a top level component where it could be directly available to all the children. So if you notice and if you use React, you see that there's a prop usually called children, and that refers to everything that would be inside of here. So having this here is simply telling you that when we wrap these components, or when we wrap everything inside this component, everything we have in our value attribute here would be able to be accessed by everything inside of here, which is the children. So this doesn't have to be in the index.js as we will do it right now, but I'm going to do this at the index.js level so that every single thing in our application would be wrapped around context API. As you move further into learning about context API and React, you will notice that in many use cases or in many places, you do not need to wrap it around the topmost index level, because you don't need that particular context to be available or to be accessed from everywhere in the application. Maybe you just need a context for your building and let's say an e-learning application, and you just need a general context API for, let's say, students, or for let's say teachers, and you just need a context for all the the teachers things and all of that. And you have a root level component just for teachers alone. You could wrap the context provider around that particular component, so it doesn't always have to be the top level component, and you get to learn other reasons why it doesn't always have to be the top level component. Because context API, when values are changed, it triggers changes in everywhere. It means it reloads the component. It means that it's reloads the component basically, and everything that is under the context tree reloads. So it could become a performance issue for a very large application if all your context is wrapped in the index.js file. But for now, you don't have such issues, and trust me, when you start having such issues, you're going to start finding a solution for it. Yeah, so let's just move forward and not have you bother about all of those for now. So we are just simply going to go to the index.js file, and in this file right here, what we want to do is to import the general provider from, okay, so I say from context / general provider. Yeah, so right now we just want to wrap this around the app component. So delete this one, say general provider. Yeah, and then inside of it we have the app container, or the app component basically. Now we are done with everything we had to do for making the context accessible from anywhere in our application, because we wrapped it around the entire app. Next thing we want to do is to go inside of the general state and start doing some magic, or inside of the general provider, sorry. Yeah, I keep calling it state because in some other projects I write, I name this general state and not general provider. So first of all, we are going to use the hook state hook. It's important to mention here that we are using the context API with hooks. So we are going to be using the use context hooks and all of that, and not writing it in the traditional way, which has faded away. So this is more like a recent use case and how to use it lately. Alright, so I'll just say is dark mode activated, and say set is dark mode activated. Yeah, so this works. And then I want to say general app colors. So general app colors. Now I'm not saying this is the one way to implement a dark theme and a light theme, but this was the way I chose to use it for this tutorial, so that it would be easily explained and I would be able to do a quick one and finish on time. These colors could be abstracted into a JSON file of its own or stuff like that, but we are not going to do all of that. So general, set general app colors, and we'll say use state. Inside of here we are going to have 4 colors, and one of them is the primary color. The primary color is just going to be white, and these colors at first are reflecting the what's it called now, the light mode. So secondary color, and the secondary color is going to be if you remember, this color is just simply the purple color we had, I guess. Yeah, that's it. And the text color, the color of the ordinary text color, and the text color is just a black color. And finally we have the faded text color. We didn't use this at first because I forgot to add it, but basically the text before the button is not exactly black, but it's more like a faded kind of black, so we need that to also be among these colors here. So the faded color is just a faded color. It's 4E, yeah. So that's it. Oops, I wasn't even seeing what I was typing right here. So it's basically 4E, 4E, 4E. Yeah. What am I doing? 4E, 4E, 4E. Yeah. That's it. No one is changing it again. So right now, what I want to simply do is to have a toggle that toggles between the light mode and the dark mode of this application. So I would simply create that function right now, and the function is a very straightforward function. So it's const toggle dark mode state. Yeah, so this would be an arrow function, and inside of it we are just going to say set is dark mode activated, and we are going to set that to the inverse of what it currently is. So if you do this, so we'll just say the inverse of is dark mode activated. So what this is, we used curly braces instead of brackets, so we just change this right now. Remember to change yours if you're following along with the tutorial. So what this is simply saying is we want to set, if the user calls this function toggle dark mode state, we want to set the state of is dark mode activated from false, and want to change it to true. And if they click on it again, we want to change it back to false. If they click on it again, we want to move it back to true. So instead of just saying true inside of here, we decided to say, let it just be the inverse of what it is at the moment, if that makes sense. The final thing we want to do here is what happens when it becomes true. So when it becomes true, we want something to happen, and for that I'm just going to be using the use effect hook for this. So let's say use effect, and this is the usual boilerplate, but this is not what I'm going to be deleting some things from here. First, we are not going to use the cleanup function. We are simply going to do something here. So what we are going to do is we are going to use a conditional statement, and please follow this. We'll say if is dark mode activated, what we simply want to do is to set the general app colors. Set, yeah, so I'm noticing a mistake I made here, and this is it. Set general E right here, and set general app colors. So I'll come down here, I'll say set general app colors. Yeah, so I'll just open it up, and this would be an object, And inside of this object, I'm simply first going to bring in general app colors right here. This is supposed to be 3. Stop making mistakes, Daniel Don. And everyone makes those mistakes, so yeah. So I'm just going to say primary color should change to the primary color should change to, remember the primary color is white now, but if dark mode is activated, the primary color should actually change from white. So this primary color is representing the background color, right, the main background color of the application. So it should change to a dark shade. So let's say 2B003F, which is what we had as secondary color if you look closely. And then the next one, secondary color now changes to white. So secondary color changes to white. And we have the text color. So the text color also, as you would guess, would change to white. Text color should change to white. And finally we have the faded color. So the faded text color. And the faded text color in this case will change to a shade of white, but not exactly white, and that is the E5 color scheme. Okay, so right now we want this function to run. Okay, we are not done here. So this is the if statement, and then if this happens, we just want it to return right here and not do what is left down below. So return, and then down here we just want to say set general app colors. Set general app colors, and then we just want to set the general app colors to the current general app colors. So this would just be ... and then we'll have general app colors right here. So yeah, this is what we want to do with this at the moment. If we want to make this clearer, and let's just do that, I'll just simply bring in this from here, and then I'll just put it here directly. So experiment with the both and you'll see that it should give you the same thing, but let's just leave this way for now. And now we are done with this, but remaining one single thing. So when this is toggled, now the use effect hook, if you know the use effect hook, it triggers when the app is loaded. So when the app is loaded, the use effect hook runs. It's more like, if you use React before now, it's more like the component did mount, thing that we run, lifecycle hook that we've run in React. But now the use effect hook is run when the app is loaded, basically. But we want this use effect hook to also run anytime the toggle is clicked and anytime the state of this dark mode activated changes from false to true. We want this to run anytime that change happens and not just on the initial load. So what we need to do is to just add the general or the is dark mode activated boolean state to this place, and this array right here is more of dependencies. In plain man's English is like, what do you want us to see, and then we run this use effect hook. So I want you to see if the state has changed for dark mode activated from false to true or from true back to false. So if the state has changed, we want you to run this function. Yeah, so basically we would just do we would just write is dark mode activated. Now I just want to point out that as I was writing this, I just realized a use case where just adding this as ellipses this way in this place wouldn't exactly work, and that is because when the user clicks to true and then clicks back to false, we don't have anything to return back to, or it would basically just return back to the same true thing, because when the change happened, the information stored in the state was the information for dark mode already. If you don't understand what I said, just try it out and you get to understand that. But let's continue with what we have here. So finally, we want to export this out of this component. And what do we want to export? We want to export the is dark mode activated. We want to export the general colors, and we want to also export this toggle dark mode state function, because we are going to be calling this function on the buttons and not here. So let us export all those things out inside our value object. The first thing is the is dark mode activated. Normally we could have a name. This is an object, and I believe you know how to use an object by now. We will have a name and say is dark mode activated like this. But since the name and the value is the same, the key and the value is the same, we are just going to leave it as one, and we'll say general app colors. And finally we'll say toggle TOGG yeah, toggle dark mode state like this. And right now we are done with our context. So everything we needed for our context, we finished it. Now we want to go ahead and apply these things that we have here to the components where they are needed. So the two components we'll have to be applying this on is the button component and also the landing page. So let us go ahead and start with the button component right here. So now we are going to go straight into the switch button component, and inside of the switch button component, this is what we have at the moment, but we need to import our general context inside of this and then use it both for the colors and for the functionalities of the on click of this button. So let us go ahead to do that immediately. Here what we are simply going to be doing is importing the general context. Sorry, I wrote importing. Import general context. Yeah, so it already completed it for me from general context, because from here this is where we can access the things stored inside of general context. But to use context, we need to import a hook, which is exactly how it sounds. Use context. Yeah. And right now inside of our our switch button function, we need I'll just run this. I'll just make use of the use context hook, and the context we want to be using is the general context. So remember, when we declared the general context, we declared it with an empty object, but right now the object is no longer empty. We didn't have to put anything directly inside the object, but we put it in the provider value, but we could access it from the context, if that makes sense. Yeah, so right now I would simply just come here and say general app colors, general app colors. Yeah, oops, this spelling is wrong, so this is supposed to be small letter. General app colors, and the space down below, and in the return statement we need to do something. So right now if we look at this on our screen with what we have already, we would see that it basically just looks the same, because before now we've just been adding functionalities. But what I want to point out is that for the buttons, if we click on them right now, nothing happens, and the colors are also static on the buttons. We declared these colors in the general CSS file, so the colors are static at this point, but we want the colors to be able to dynamically change based on the mode of the current what's it called right now, the current general app colors, or the current state of our application. Is dark mode activated or not? So let's go back to our code and see how that would work for us. So inside of here we'll just declare a style sheet. Now if you're using something like styled components, if you've tried it out before, I guess you could use it also in this case and do this instead of putting a style here and there's a way it's done. But we are using plain CSS, and we are going to be using a style sheet in this place to add these things. So inside of here I'll just say background color. So we want to say background color of this application, and the background color, I want to set the background color to general app colors yeah, colors dot secondary color, yeah, because our secondary color is the background color of this application. And then I want to go ahead to say color, and I'll say general app colors, yeah, dot primary color. Okay, so the background is the secondary color and the primary color. Remember, this is the background for the button, not the background for the entire application. So the background is the secondary color, which is the dark color on light mode, and the white color on on dark mode. Yeah, and the color is the primary color, which is white for the white mode, and then I think purple for dark mode. So let's look at what this could give us right now. And you notice that this is still what we have right here. Let me click on this, and you see that nothing happens at the moment, and that is because we haven't called our function for toggling the state of the application. Where are we going to do that? Let's go to the top nav component. So in the top nav component, that is where we would actually call the function for on click of the button. So right now I'll click on the top nav component, and inside of it I'm just still going to bring in the use context, and I'm going to import the general context from this. Oh yeah, it has done it for me. And I'm just going to come here, and I'm going to say const, let's just write use context general context, and specifically what I want to bring in here is two things basically. So I want to bring in is dark mode activated, oops, yeah, if you spotted this mistake before me, I'm sorry. And next I want to bring in the toggle, the toggle, what's it called, the toggle function. So that is toggle dark mode state. Yeah, so right now we want to write a function, or we are not really writing a function here, we are just passing in this function into the onClick handler for this button. So how we are going to do that, let me just break this down into multiple lines so that it's clearer. And here I'm just going to say on click, and remember we have already declared this, and we have already used this as a prop inside of our switch button component. So on click, I want to write a function on click, and my function is simple, it's just going to be called toggle dark mode state. And right now it's toggling the dark mode state, and let's look at how that would work. So if I click here, we see that right now it is not toggling the state, but we could change something here. So let's look at that. Let's just finish up, and then we'll look at it. So for the text right here, I could copy this, I could cut this out, because right now it's showing just dark mode, but I want it to change between the both of them if the text is when the button is clicked. So I'm simply going to say is dark mode activated, and this is just a ternary operator, that if dark mode is activated, the text should say light mode, but if it's not activated, the text should say dark mode. And let us try this again before I try debugging where the problem is from. Okay guys, so I just figured out what the problem was, and it was just an issue with spelling, right? And it's like the worst character you can get to spell wrong, because it's hard to identify, and little things in your code would usually break your code, and you don't know what that is. So in this case, it was the spelling of K right here, and I'm just simply going to change that to small letters because it's not the start of any word. So right now, if we go back to to our screen and we click on this, we see that it's toggling between the light mode and the dark mode, but the color isn't quite showing up. And let's look at that right now. So going back to the top nav, we see this happening here, but we should really have to check the switch colors. So for the switch colors, we have secondary color, and the color is the primary color. Okay, so let's look at that. So yeah, for the color and the primary color especially, I saw that I made mistake, also kind of like a spelling issue in this place right here. That shows you that one of the biggest issues when writing code sometimes is usually spelling issue, and you know that by now if you write code also. So sorry about that, and I'll just change it to 3F right here. And let's look at what our result is going to be like. So if we click on it, it toggles and it says light mode because now it's supposed to be in dark mode. And if you click on it again, it says dark mode. What you simply notice is that we have this implemented in just one place, which is the context. And when I do that action from here, it also affects the button also on this place without me having to pass any special thing to this component. But because we used one component 2 times, in each of the use cases, it just works on them, and that is cool. Yeah. So next, what you notice is that if I click on this, it's not doing anything at the moment. That is because we haven't called the function on this particular button right here. So remember, we passed that in as props, so we are just going to go to the top navigation where we've called it, and I'm simply just going to take this right here, to take the both of them right here. Yeah, I'm really just going to take the both of them right here, and I'm going to go over to my landing page. So I'm going to go over to my landing page and I'll put it there while I import the other 2 things into that place. So where is my landing page? Yeah, here. So I'm simply going to do this like this, and right now paste it inside of here. Cool. So next I want to import the same things that we did for the other one. You know what, I'm simply just going to go there and just copy it out of there and put it here. So copy the general context thing, or better still, copy this particular one, go back here and import the general context. Yeah, this helped with that, thank you. And I'm also going to import the use context hook, and right now I would go ahead to bring that into this place. Oh yeah, I already have it, so I'll just paste that right now, and I'll save this file and see what we have right here. So if I click on this, you see it toggles it to light mode and dark mode. So for the other things in our application, which is the background color and the color of the text, I'm just going to go ahead to fix that in right now because we are already in the landing page component, and it's on that component we have to do the whole thing. So let's go ahead and do that quickly as we wrap up. So right now on the landing page container, which is where we have the entire view, which we declared the 100 view width and the view height also, I'm just going to give this a styling right now, and to have the colors here, I'm simply just going to bring in the general app colors, and I'm going to come to this first place here, put the style attributes, and inside of here I just want to say background color should now be general app colors dot primary color. Yeah, my cursor went somewhere else. Primary color. And that is literally all for this particular place. I'm going to move to the H1, which is here, and I'm simply going to also have the style inside of it. Now why I'm doing it here and not in the CSS file, as you already know, or if you don't, is that I'm able to control the styling dynamically from this file. So I'm able to have it controlled with, JavaScript, basically, because having something like this is JavaScript, and this isn't the usual CSS. So I'm simply going to say color of this text. I want the color of this text to be general app colors dot faded text color. Yeah, so faded text color this way. And then the next thing is that I want to also have the text color for the p tag right here. So style, and I'll say color should be general app colors dot text color. Yeah, so let us look at how this would work right now. And once we click on it, we see that this happened, and when we click on it again, we see this happen. Now the welcome isn't changing, and I just want to check if there was also a spelling mistake there. So let's say faded text color, and let me go over to my general provider and check for it right here. Oh, there was also a spelling mistake here. I really made a lot of spelling mistakes. Okay, so faded text color, and I think this should fix it. So let's try again. Yeah, so it fixed it. So right now we see that we are able to toggle between dark mode and light mode in this application. Context API helped us to do this amazingly well, because we didn't have to write the function in many places. We didn't have to declare these color variables in many places or pass it as props to many components and have to engage in prop drilling. We literally just did everything here, exported it from here, and we could simply just use the use context hook to pull it into any components needed. Like I explained in a use case where this component is not really related to the other component, so it's not a child of it, it's not even a direct sibling of it, and it's not a uh, parent, what's it called, it's not a parent component, right? It's difficult to have one particular state able to work in everywhere, and it would result to you having to drill props into component by component by component. I mean, you pass it as a prop to this component, and then you pass that prop as a prop to a sub component, then you pass that prop as a prop to another sub component, and then the prop keeps going deeper. With context API, we simply just had to do it in a context, in a general context file, wrap that general context file around where we want to use it, in the root component of where we want to use it, and we moved straight to utilizing the amazing features of context in the different places we worked on. I hope you've learned a lot from this tutorial, and this is just a basic use case of it. It's really powerful. I hope to see you in my other videos. If you want to watch more videos around software engineering and all of that, you could check out my YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, and follow me as well. I make these videos for free, and I would like all to get all the support I can get. My name still remains Daniel Dunn, and this is the basic app we built out. See you some other time. Bye.